to Tefo His-tory channel. I am Catherine Margaret Kruger and I will tell you the story behind the his-tory. Shall we say, her story, for I will tell you about the Hex of the Hex River Vallay, the witch of the Hex River Valley. So get yourself a cup of coffee and let's start historying around. Now before we get to the witch story, the Hex. Witch story? The Hex. Witch story? The Hex. Oh, sorry for being punny. Oh, darling. But before we get to the Hex of the Hex River Valley story, I firstly want to tell you where you can find this valley. It's about 120 kilometers inland from Cape Town, in between the towns of Worcester and the Dorings. Surrounding this valley is huge mountains. The highest peak is the Matroosberg. Matroosberg, that would be Sailor Mountain. And it's around about, or it is, 2,249 meters above sea level. The second highest peak of the Western Cape province. In wintertime, it is spectacular to be in this valley, especially after snow has fallen. The peaks are white. And, you know, it's a big thing seeing snow in South Africa for South Africans because we're not really used to that. Let me first tell you about the early history of the Hex River Valley. In 1707, Governor Willem Adriaan van der Stel had his hands or his paws in the government's pie. To put it lightly, he was corrupt. It seems like history repeats itself over and over again. For he got himself a farm. Like some statesmen nowadays, he had himself a piece of land like in Nkandla. He just named it Vergelegen. Vergelegen means far away. Now it was far away from the Cape or Cape Town. So he decided by himself, Willem Adriaan, you are the only person that may sell your produce to passing ships on their way to the east and on their way back to Europe. No other farmer could sell their products to these passing ships. You see, Willem Adriaan had the monopoly. Well, unfortunately for him, the Netherlands heard about the whole story and they said to him, it's time, Willem Adriaan, that you actually come back to the Netherlands. And it's only then that the farms actually extended the area of Rivier Sonder End and the Brede River. Breed means broad and Sonder End means without an end. So river without an end and the broad river. Now on the other side of the broad river, there they founded the area that was called the Hex River. Please listen carefully. The Hex River, not the Hex or Witch River. At first, it was called Hex. Now, by the end of the 18th century, there was already 6 farms granted to farmers so that their livestock could graze in this valley. If you enter from a southwesterly point, or let's say from Worcester's side, into the valley, you would first find the farm Canet Valley. Now, Canet is a kind of a marsh reed that grows in this area, or it's called Eclea capensis. The second farm that you would find was actually Rode Zand. Now, Rode Zand means red sand. This sand is really oxidated and it gives a sort of this oxidation gives a red color to the soil. Now the third farm was named Venduti-kraal. Venduti in Afrikaans is Vendusi, and if I have to translate it into English, it is an auction pen. Auction pen because the old farmers would sell their livestock or their sheep, their cattle to people that was moving all the way from Cape Town right through this valley to the Great Karoo. The fourth farm was Modderdrift. Modder means mud and drift is a crossing, so it's a muddy crossing over the river. The fifth farm was the Doring. The Doring means the thorn. Now, it is because of the thorn trees that grows in this area, the Acacia Karoo. That is why this farm got its name. Then farm number 6 was Buffelsdrift, Buffalo Crossing. Apparently in the olden days there must have been buffaloes crossing this area, but not today. Now these 6 farms was all divided into 150 farms that we can see today in this valley. Now all these farms lie in a valley named Hex, not Hex or Witch. One of the reasons why this area was called Hex was because 3 rivers flow together and it forms the letter X. Another story is when the road was built, the mountain pass, it crisscrosses the river a few times, forming X's over the river. So the X name predates the Hex name or the witch name, but let's not kill a good story. Let's focus on the Hex of Hex River Valley. Now the Hex story or the witch story, it is all about a legend that is based on a true story. This all happened in 1768 when the first people moved into the area of the Hex River Valley. You see, Eliza Meyring lived with her parents on the farm of Buffelsdrift. She was beautiful. Oh, she had long hair, a very fair skin. Oh, and all the suitors in the valley who tried to court her and tried to ask her for her hand in marriage. But Eliza had one problem. She was vain. She was so vain that it saddened her parents. So she would even say to the young suitors, down a little pointed nose, ek sal eers kyk na 'n man wat nie eers braaf genoeg is om die Matroosberg op te klim en vir my 'n disablom te pluk en dit na benede bring nie. In short, that was, I will not even look at a man who is not brave enough to go all the way up to the highest peak of the Matroosberg to get me or pick me a flower, and not any flower, a Disa flower. Now a Disa flower, that is a kind of orchid that grows on the slopes of the mountains, on the highest peaks. So you can just imagine, so many young men tried, and then halfway up the mountain they decide, no way, it is too dangerous. Especially when the mist would come up and you can't see even your hand in front of your face. But just when Eliza's parents thought that Eliza would never get a man, a young man rode onto the little farm road and he was singing. He sang, al slaan jou pa my driemaal op die kop en staan ek op en kom ek weer. Al slaan jou pa my driemaal op die kop en staan ek op. Anyhow, he sang a song. I don't know if it was this song, but it seemed the right song to sing. So his name was Frans and he was beautiful. He had light blue eyes, beautiful hair as well in the wind on his horse. He was strong. He came from a very good family in the area. And boy, oh boy, could he work hard. So when he entered the farm, Eliza had sort of a double take, and she thought, oh my word, this is the most beautiful young man that I've ever set my eyes on. Maybe I must just marry him, and I don't even have to give him this challenge to go all the way up the Matroosberg mountain. But suddenly her vanity kicked in again, and she said to Frans, oh Frans, you know what, you can marry me, but firstly you have to prove to all the other men that you are really the bravest to go and fetch me that flower, the Disa flower. Oh, Frans didn't think twice. He worked out a little bit, stretched his legs and his arms. Frans climbed up the mountain with force. He nearly ran it up because all that he had in his mind was, oh, I'm gonna marry Eliza Meyren, and I am the strongest man in this area. And he went all the way up to the highest peak of the Matroosberg, and there he saw all the orchids standing red, the Disa or the Disa flower. He reached out to pick the Disa flower, and he reached out, and oh my goodness gracious, there his foot slipped on the moss that was growing onto the rocks. He plunged down to the bottom with the flower in his hand. He fell to his death. And when Eliza heard about the news, she went totally mad. She couldn't believe what she did to the first and only man that she loved. She went so crazy that her parents had to lock her up in their house just to keep her away from the windows. The doors was quite a struggle, because you see, the only thing that Eliza wanted to do was to head out and climb the mountain to search for Frans. One evening, she escaped, and in her white nightgown with her loose mad hair, she ran all the way up to the Matroosberg krans, or the peak, and she was barefoot and she slipped. Need I tell you more? She fell to her death. And still up to today, when it's full moon and the mist is in the air, you can see Eliza with her white gown, loose hair, yelling, "Frans! Frans!" Then that is when the old people in the valley will tell you, lock your doors. Lock your doors before she gets into your house. Now, my dear friends, that is why this valley is no longer called or named the Hex River Valley, but the Hex River Valley. Frans. Now, history lovers, that was then the his story, or her story behind Eliza Meyren, the Hex of the Hex River Valley. Click subscribe, like and share, and join me on my next video, His-Storing Around. Cheers!